Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warfare, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Well, in case you're wondering where my Raw review was this week, there was none. I mentioned at the end of my SmackDown review this past weekend, I'm taking a bit of a mental and physical health break this week. It is not staying up late to watch and review Raw and SmackDown this week, although I am doing it obviously for the Wednesday shows. So yeah, no Raw review on Monday, no SmackDown review this Friday. Following this week, I'll try and reassess how I do those and how late I stay up for those kind of reviews from here on out. Yeah, stay tuned for later this week, though, when I have my TakeOver in Your House predictions video dropping a little bit later this week, Friday or Saturday. But before we begin, as always, like what you like, don't be a dick, Black Lives Matter. NXT begins with Mia Yim versus Candice LeRae. The match doesn't get too far into it before they both fight on the outside, and they're both counted out. And just as the bell rings, we see Candice Hurricanrana Yim into the LED screen, and it glitches, of course, like it's wont to do. Then out comes Tegan Nox to try and break up the fight. Then out come Shotzi Blackheart, Raquel Gonzalez, and Dakota Kai, and they're all fighting and everything. And then Keith Lee and Johnny Gargano make their way out to the ring as well. And so then the match is restarted as a mixed tag team match, even though Keith and Johnny are wearing their street clothes for this one. A great moment as the match begins when Lee's got Johnny up in a press slam on the outside. Candice hops onto Keith's back, and Keith doesn't even register. He doesn't even notice it. He's just walking along with her on his back like she was a little backpack. It was hilarious. There's still mostly the women working this match, though. The men I don't think actually tag in at all in this thing legally, but we do get a moment where the two of them are in the ring at some point. In the end, Lee goes for a powerbomb, but Johnny gigs him in the eye with his car keys, and then as he's selling, Mia Yim's checking on him. Candice rolls Yim up to win the match for her and her husband. And then afterward, there's this moment where Lee is selling the eye, leaning to the outside to yell at Johnny, but his hand slips and it gets caught between the ring and the steps, and Johnny stomps the steps, so it hits his hand. That seemed a bit excessive. I mean, I don't know how you could top stabbing somebody in the eye with car keys, and let's follow it up with also kicking his hand. That seemed like do one or the other, but don't do both. Anyway, there's a wild segment here, lots of ballyhoo. It said not only did it further the storyline with these two couples, it also set up a women's tag team, a six-woman tag team match for In Your House later on. So accomplished a lot of stuff here. We got a hype package for the Tommaso Ciampa Karrion Kross match for TakeOver. Then we see Dexter Loomis being interviewed backstage. He's asked what he thinks Velveteen Dream's odds are becoming the NXT champion. He says nothing, but he walks off screen to bring out an easel, and he starts to draw. It turns out he's an artist now. A couple commercial breaks later, we come back to the interview and we see he has completed, it's like one of those portraits you get at the boardwalk on the beach or on the strip in Vegas, where it's all these exaggerated caricatures. It's Dexter Loomis driving a truck with the Undisputed Era tied up in the back of it. And that's his interpretation of what he thinks he's going to do to the Undisputed Era. So yes, it turns out this strong, silent psychopath is also, he's a very gifted, gentle, tender artist. We get the first of two of these Prime Target promo packages. They're basically these back-to-back promos with Adam Cole and Velveteen Dream in these different settings, and they're punctuated by these sound bites from Sam Roberts, Pat McAfee, and Peter Rosenberg. You see on one side, the Undisputed Era and Adam Cole are celebrating Adam's one-year anniversary with the NXT Championship. Meanwhile, Velveteen Dream is rollerblading around Full Sail. Then on his couch, Dream has the ladies produce a mirror, and he goes, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who will be the greatest NXT champion of all?" And then his reflection turns into an image of a weird Prince lookalike. If it's supposed to be someone I know dressed as Prince, I did not pick up on that. I just thought, okay, here's a guy who looks vaguely like Prince if I took my glasses off and squinted. And he says it's Velveteen Dream, and that's pretty much where that ends. Certainly was an interesting thing. We find out that these two are to be in a backlot brawl, or a bra, as Vincent Man might say on commentary, for In Your House, which should be a good match. I mean, just the cinematic style we've seen from NXT in the last couple of big matches they've done with their takeovers. I mean, I've enjoyed them, so I'm looking forward to see how they pull off this one. Tony Nese taking on Isaiah Swerve Scott. This match stems from the Cruiserweight title tournament when Nese and Jack Gallagher worked together to cost Swerve his spot in the tournament, his place in the tournament, I should say. Nese asserting his strength with Swerve early on. He's got him in a guillotine choke, but Swerve actually powers out of it. It's a brainbuster to start his comeback. Near the end, he's on the top rope, and Jack Gallagher shows up once again to distract. It almost cost him the match, but Swerve is able to counter out of the sunset driver into a proper sunset flip and wins. So he's gotten Nice embarrassed once again, and this rivalry here does not appear to be over just yet. A triple threat match to determine the #1 contenders for the tag titles. You've got Lorcan and Birch, you have the Undisputed Era, and a mystery team, and it's revealed to be Breezango. They are back, and they're dressed as astronauts. Fandango was off TV for a long time, rehabbing a UCL tear in his elbow, and he's back here in this night. The match itself was okay, nothing too crazy to talk about, but in the end, Fish and O'Reilly are distracted by Dexter Loomis, the artiste standing at ringside in the audience. That allows Breezango to capitalize with the beauty shot in the last dance to win. They're the new #1 contenders. I guess that build with Lorcan and Birch for the last few weeks was just an aberration. Anyway, after that match is over, we see Imperium walk to the stage and look on, and then we see Bivens Enterprises, Rinku and Sarav with Malcolm Bivens watching as well. So the NXT tag scene is definitely wide open at this point. I assumed that, okay, well, Breezango win here, but Lorcan and Birch are still going to fight for the tag titles at TakeOver, was my thought. But last I looked at the card, that match is not happening. So again, why'd they spend the last 2-3 weeks building up Lorcan and Birch and Imperium as a conflict, and we're not getting that? We see a backstage interview from last week after the women's tag team match. Chelsea Green having just teamed up with Charlotte Flair. She says her stock has never been higher now, therefore she is firing Robert Stone as a representation. And so I thought it was I was surprised to see that. I don't know why they would kill that relationship off before it really went anywhere. But then we go to our next match. Aliyah takes on Santana Garrett. As the match begins, we get a very disheveled Robert Stone walking up to look on and cheer on Aliyah. This is the most competitive Santana Garrett match I've seen in a while here. And to top it off, she wins. She hits a springboard standing moonsault or back spring moonsault onto Aliyah to win the match up here. And so Stone is very distraught by what he sees. But I'm like, dude, why don't you just go and recruit Santana now instead of Aliyah? We get another Prime Target promo, this one for the triple threat match for the Women's Championship. You've got Io Shirai floating in a tank of water. You have Rhea Ripley getting up at the crack of dawn and go to the gym. And you have Charlotte Flair training in the ring. A great line by Rhea here in this promo where she says, you know, the NXT Women's Championship has now been represented on all 3 of the brands, so it's going to be that much sweeter when I win it back because it's got that exposure, the prestige now. If she were to win it back, I think that would be kind of a nice little redemption after WrestleMania. It might make the Charlotte reign kind of worth it at this point, but time will tell. And then there's one part here that creeped me out. It's like when they did the moving pictures with Io Shirai growing up and then like getting early in wrestling. The effect, I get what they're doing with it. I've seen it done before. They did it with Fantasma a few weeks ago, and I hated it then. I hated it here too. Cameron Grimes versus Bronson Reed up next. Pretty short and sweet matchup here. It ends when Bronson goes for a top rope splash, but he whiffs it, which allows Cameron to hit the cave-in to win the match. So more big wins for Grimes here, but just as he's celebrating the win, Karrion Kross materializes in the ring. Grimes bounces, but Bronson eats a Doomsday Saito for his troubles. Then afterward, Karrion with a simple one-word message to the camera toward Ciampa: special TikTok. Okay, that was 3 words. Main event time. It's the interim Cruiserweight Championship Tournament Finals as Drake Maverick takes on El Hijo del Fantasma. And it's all or nothing for Drake here, because either he wins, he's the new champion, or he loses and he's out of a job after having been officially released a couple of months ago. But he's still been able to stay strong this entire time. Early in the match, Drake is powerbombed on the floor, and he makes more of those just highly uncomfortable to listen to selling noises. But truth be told, I would probably make the same noises if I were powerbombed on the floor. So anyway, he's very resilient, makes a very valiant comeback. The 2 of them are on the top rope and they both fall off. Then out come the Lucha Kidnappers to confront Fantasma, but Drake beats the 2 of them up, chases them off, but then he walks right into a Phantom Driver by Fantasma, and so Fantasma wins the match and is the new Cruiserweight champion, and they say he's the interim champion, and of course Jordan Devlin still the regular champion. So it's a good match, but the story here is, Drake Maverick, his luck has run out and he's no longer has a job with the company. Or does he? Because after the match, he gets a standing ovation from the crowd, who's standing the entire time, so maybe it's not that special. But he's getting the ovation from the crowd, and then suddenly Triple H walks in and offers him an NXT contract, and he signs it, and he's super happy, and that's where the show ends. So Drake is not the champion, but he still gets the happy ending, so very, very nice all around. However, I would feel much better about this if this storyline was not born from the real-life releases of dozens of wrestlers from the company, because that's what began get all this was Drake was one of the many people who were released at the height of the the pandemic scare and everything. Even though WWE still making money hand over fist, they could have afforded to keep these folks on. They cut the whole lot of them, and some of them probably benefited from the release more than others. But you have Drake Maverick, who was cut, even though he was advertised for this tournament. He cuts this very heartfelt, passionate promo on social media, and suddenly he's the one who gets this run where he's in the tournament, makes it all the way to the finals, and he still gets his contract back. So either they released him and they brought him back, or it was an angle all along, which I was afraid of would happen from the very beginning. And either way you slice it, whether it was intentional or not, that he would get released and come back, is supremely fucked up. And David Bixenspan on Twitter has many very good points about this as well. I'm kind of echoing his sentiment here. It's a slap in the face to all the wrestlers who didn't get that chance to make a comeback. I guess they didn't work hard enough. Basically, the way they were trying to portray this is, oh, Drake had the passion and had the heart to come back from being released, and he got himself a job again. And like, well, okay, what about all the other people you released and didn't give that same chance to? Were they not working hard enough? It seems very callous, very exploitive, and the more you step back and the more you look at the storyline in general, yeah, it's cool that Drake got his job back, if he ever lost it to begin with, but to have this angle at the expense of all the other folks who got released, I don't know, that does not sit well with me. The more I think about it, and I had my reservations about this from the very beginning, when they started this tournament and Drake was still in it. I worried about it then, and then it was fun to watch the redemption angle, yes, but then when you think about like what it was born from, man, it just doesn't sit well with me. Dynamite begins this week with the AEW Tag Title Match as Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc, who won the opportunity against SCU last week, challenge Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. Page, by the way, in his first match back on Dynamite in several months, ever since the Empty Arena shows first began. Early on, Penelope Ford goes for a top-up Hurricane Rana. Page catches her, but doesn't know what to do with her. So what do I do? I just dropped her. And so then she was eventually ejected. Jimmy Havoc with a lot of time to shine in this matchup here. He takes a lot, but he also gives a lot, showing us some of his violent tendencies in the matchup. At one point, he clocks Page and Omega with a wrench while the referee is not looking. Also brings a hacksaw into the ring at one point, but that is soon thwarted during the champion's comeback. Omega with the hot tag, a big flurry of offense. A lot of close calls near the end, but ultimately Havoc takes the last call, which is the buckshot V-trigger combo for the champions to retain. A very entertaining opening matchup here. You see the best friends looking on because they're going to be challenged for the belts at Fyter Fest, and you also see FTR sitting way up in the stands watching as well. We see a recap of a segment from last week where Tully Blanchard's screaming at Shawn Spears for losing a Double or Nothing, and then we see an update where he gets into a car with Shawn with this little Pelican case, this little briefcase here, and he presents Shawn his new gimmick, the single fingerless black glove. Well, it worked for Barry Windham, it works for the longest reigning YouTube champion Levi Shapiro, so maybe it'll work for Spears. Up next, Brian Cage destroys poor jobber Shawn Dean while Taz looks on with his rally towel, and then when the match is over, Taz gets to the mic and addresses Jon Moxley, because last week when he was cutting a promo on Moxley, Jon was kind of laughing it off and kind of smirking as Taz was issuing his threats, and Taz took great offense to that, and so he talks more about how Cage is going to destroy him at Fyter Fest. Moxley then shows up, gets in the ring, and offers a retort. He says he was smiling last week because he likes the idea. It excites him, the idea of him wrestling Brian Cage with the title at Fyter Fest, but he also says he is a different kind of animal, he's a different kind of shark, and he will not be intimidated. So that's where the promo ends there. Nice. It doesn't resort to violence just yet. They're saving that for probably for later in the build toward Fyter Fest, which we find out on this show is going to be a 2-night event. It's going to be happening not on pay-per-view, but actually in place of Dynamite on July 1st and 8th. So basically NXT is going to be competing with two of their pay-per-view caliber matches for 2 weeks in a row. Should be very interesting. Somebody asked me on social media how I'm going to cover that in those 2 weeks. And I'm going to treat it like it's a regular show or like a special show. Because, TakeOver, NXT was doing the TakeOver matches from what were supposed to be in Tampa on free television, and now AEW is doing the same thing with Fyter Fest, which I'm excited about. I'm curious to see how they're going to deliver that. It's going to be like WrestleMania, only stretched much further out. Alex Marvez finds Lance Archer beating up some poor schlub outside the arena, and Archer's very mad and very intense, saying that one loss to Cody means nothing. He's still going to kill everybody. Everybody still dies, and he storms off. Even Jake Roberts is kind of shocked and very apologetic toward Marvez for Archer's treatment toward him. Then we see unkillable Matt Hardy, not not broken Matt Hardy. We see kind of the earlier iteration of Matt Hardy talking to Private Party in the bar area, and Hardy puts them over big and basically says, like, you two remind me of the bond that my brother and I have and everything. And so then Private Party pitch Hardy Party to him, and Matt he's considering it. He likes the idea, how it sounds. So then he walks out of the bar. He walks past Sammy Guevara, who's on one of those wheelie scooters to heal his leg. But Hardy just says, we're cool now, respect. And Guevara is very confused. Up next, Chris Jericho taking on Colt Cabana, two guys who have each been in wrestling for a very long time but have never actually wrestled one-on-one. This match came about as a result of the Jericho-Mike Tyson brawl last week, where Jericho believes Colt prevented him from getting a shot in at Tyson as the brawl was coming to a close. As Jericho makes his entrance, he's brought to the ring by Jake Hager and Sammy Guevara, who is very badly singing along to the theme Judas. And I love JR on commentary. Give him a break. He's been hurt a lot. It's a nice competitive match. Early on, Colt hits a nice Asai moonsault to Hager and Jericho, but then Hager gets a cheap shot as the referee is not looking. It's a very competitive match here. Colt even goes to the Superman, but Jericho counters into the walls with Jericho. We get a rope break. Colt bounces off the corner, but he eats a Judas effect for Jericho to win. A nice hard-fought effort by Colt here. Then after the match, Jericho on the mic calls out the baddest man on the planet, and he gets Orange Cassidy, who just saunters into the ring. He makes Jericho put his hand in not his pockets, but his belt, essentially. And then he avoids attacks by Hager and Jericho, gets out of the ring, he rolls out and just backs up on the barricade, where the best friends just pick him up and bring him to safety behind the barricade, that made me smile so much. And God, with all the interactions we're seeing the last couple weeks with the best friends, and in particular, Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho, will we get that matchup? Orange and Jericho, man, I don't know if I'm going to be ready for it. And from one awesome thing to the next, I owe everyone an apology for my take on the Britt Baker segment last week. The awkwardness that was there was by design, and clearly I misconstrued it. Maybe I was just not feeling it at the moment. But man, this segment this week really made up for it, in my opinion. It was like her recovery montage, and she's like pulling a 5-pound weight behind her wheelchair. She's not really working her leg at all, but like it's a parody of those those gutsy injury rehab hype packages and everything, and Rebel's doing a lot of the work for her, and the medic is there too, and they're both. My favorite part is the end where she's kind of wheeling up the ramp, and you have Rebel and you've got the doctor cheering on. Then Tony Schiavone comes in too as an extra boost of motivation for Britt, and that was just so hilarious. I loved every moment of that. But then our next matchup here is Nyla Rose versus Big Swole, who's rocking some Power Rangers themed attire on this night. I loved that here. It's a pretty good match. Swole looks very competitive going against the former women's champion, but is ultimately taken out with a big old spine buster. And then after the match, Swole's being interviewed. We see Britt Baker in her Rolls Royce, roll spelled like role model, not the wheelchair, the regular, you know what I mean, or ROLE, but the golf cart's called the Rolls Royce, and she tells Rebel to back it up. So she backs up and just crashes into the barricade and starts yelling at Swole. And then Swole gets in her face and grabs a chair, and so then Baker and the Rolls Royce drive off. So I'm wondering what that's going to lead to. Is Swole going to be Baker's first opponent or first feud after she gets back from her injury? Is Swole a conspirator now too? Time will tell. Tony Schiavone's all over the place in this show, man. First you see him backstage interviewing Darby Allin, talking about how apparently he's not medically clear to compete tonight, and he asks, was Brian Cage's attack on you in that ladder match Double or Nothing, was that a response to what happened between you and Taz? Parentheses, yes it was. But Darby says, life's a big joke, and Brian Cage, I'm going to have the last laugh. Then after the commercial break, we see Schiavone once again interviewing FTR. So what does the FTR stand for? Basically, it stands for whatever they want it to stand for. They talk about all the different tag teams in AEW they want to face off with, and they dash the nice little dig at the Lucha Brothers, saying, we want to fight these guys to bring back tag team wrestling, in particular tags. I see what you did there, but they don't mention the Young Bucks directly because it's they don't want to wrestle the Young Bucks. They want to punch the Young Bucks in the mouth, but they want to wait until they're all healed up. They want to make sure they're perfectly rested. So there's no excuses for when they actually finally have their inevitable face-off. And then as the interview's over, you see kind of Tony talking kind of informally with them, saying, I always thought that FTR stood for bleep the bleep, fuck the revival and everything. But then the Butcher and the Blade show up and they want to scrap, but FTR says, let's settle this in the ring, and then we're going to have that match next week. So good little introductory promo or interview with FTR. We're hearing them really talk for the first time since they were released from WWE. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they perform in the ring against the Butcher and the Blade, again, as they build toward their inevitable clash with the Young Bucks. But I'm wondering, are they going to do it at Fyter Fest, or are they going to wait till All Out? That might be a bigger draw, I'd say. Backstage, Alex Marvez interviewing Colt Cabana after his match. He sounds frustrated. He's not able to win the big matches when it counts here. Suddenly, Brody Lee and the nameless online recruiter for the Dark Order show up, and Brody basically offers him a spot there, and the nameless guy hands him a bottle of water, and Colt seems like he's weighing his options. We go to our main event now, TNT Championship match, as Cody defends against Jungle Boy, who won a Battle Royal last week to earn this opportunity. Early in the match, Cody catching Jungle Boy mid-dive and hucking him into Billy and Austin Gunn in the front row. Cody's very fierce and aggressive in this matchup here, but he's a little too much because he headbutts a wall trying to go for Jungle Boy, ends up busted open as a result. And the way they kind of cover up the process of him gigging is you see this face-off with MJF and Jungle Boy in the front row and everything. I must have missed, though, how the timekeeper's table on the opposite end of the ring moved into a position where these two could fall off the top rope and onto it. I mean, there's a lot of great wrestling building up to that, but then there's a spot where they're both on the top rope and they both just kind of plummet through this table, which seems conveniently placed there. Cody's the first one up, which surprised me because he took the brunt of that bump. Like, it was like they were stacked on top of each other, where he and Jungle Boy. Cody landed first. Like, Cody broke Jungle Boy's fall, basically. But Cody was the first one up. I was a little surprised that he basically didn't sell it as much. He gets Jungle Boy in the ring, hits a big old crossroads to win and retain, but we get a nice little babyface hug and arm raise to end the show. And it turns out Mark Quinn is going to be challenging Cody for the TNT Championship next week. And Mark Quinn, I really like this stuff in the tag team stuff with he and Isaiah Cassidy. So how he's going to perform in a singles capacity, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he and Cody can mesh well. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, NXT or AEW Dynamite, and this week my choice is AEW. I feel match-wise, NXT didn't do a whole lot for me this week, barring the main event for the Cruiserweight title, which, as good as it was, and as much of a happy feel-good moment it was at the end when Drake got his contract despite losing, it still kind of rings hollow to me because, again, it's born out of this really shitty circumstance when all these wrestlers got fired for essentially no reason, and Drake seems to be the only beneficiary to come out nice, come out on the other end doing pretty well after all that crappy stuff happened. I did enjoy the Prime Target promos. I thought they were very well produced, and I think they did a good job showcasing all the competitors in those matches in very unique, on-brand and in-character ways. I think it was really beneficial to them. But for a go-home show before TakeOver, I don't think this episode did anything. It didn't make me want to watch that show any more than I already did before this week. As far as AEW goes, there were a lot more fun moments for me and more interesting matches. It was cool to hear FTR speak for the first time in a while about the tag team scene in the company. The humorous stuff with Orange Cassidy and Jericho, and then the Britt Baker thing, just that killed me. But so yeah, for those reasons and more, AEW is my pick this week. But let me know what you thought about NXT and AEW this week in the comment section below. And for one final glorious time, because they're getting rid of the polls after next week, go to the iCard in the corner of your screen and vote which show you thought won for the week. And be sure to stay tuned later in the week for my TakeOver in Your House predictions video. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.